Hi, this is Mark Farnham with Apologetics for the Church, and here with me today is Jeff Mindler, our research assistant. And today we're talking about a really important question. It's kind of a two-part question. How does apologetics help a pastor, and why don't churches do apologetics? Or even more specifically, why aren't many pastors interested in apologetics? So I'm just going to start with a personal testimony. I used to pastor in New London, Connecticut. I took that church when I was 28 years old. In 1995, I thought, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I had been trained in seminary. Don't jump around, unless God forces you out of a place. So stay in one place. And this church was an urban church. We had all kinds of crazy crime around us. I never felt unsafe because our street was generally safe. But in the last year that we lived there, we had a pizza delivered and two guys armed were waiting for the pizza guy when he left my house and went out and were beating him up, trying to rob him. And when I finally figured that out, I ran out of the house chasing these guys without even thinking. So it was an urban church, but we were 2 miles from the ocean, and our church kind of sat right between the bad part of the town where there was more crime and poverty and difficulty, and the wealthy beach homes. So you had 2 miles south from our church, and you had big beach homes and a beautiful beach. You had 2 miles north of our church, and you're into the center of the city of New London. But I thought, I'm going to pastor there the rest of my life. But one of my frustrations as a pastor was, even though I felt my seminary had prepared me to preach and to lead and to disciple, it had not prepared me, because we didn't really have apologetics, to evangelize or to lead my church in evangelization, engagement with unbelievers. And that, to me, I pastored for 7 years before leaving and going into teaching. That, to me, was the number one biggest frustration. Was I just felt like I don't know how to do this well. I don't know how to engage unbelievers, and I don't know how to lead my church in evangelism. And we would try. I mean, we would have events like Vacation Bible School, which was good. We reached a lot of kids.
Right.
But I wanted to also speak directly to adults. And I just felt like I could not do that. I would try the typical evangelism procedures of cornering someone and trying to burp out the gospel, get that monologue out, that 2-minute summary of the gospel, and hope that they would just want to be saved right then and there. And that never happened. Yeah. And I remember one time at the park behind the church, I was sitting there reading my Bible. It was a beautiful day. We had incredible weather in this location. And this young woman was running around the track at the park, and she came up and approached me. And she said, "Are you reading the Bible?" And I said, "Yeah." And she began to talk to me about the Bible. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great, a witnessing opportunity. But she was actually a member of the International Churches of Christ, which is a cult based in Boston. It's not nearly as big as it used to be, I don't believe. And part of that cult was the belief that baptism is part of salvation. And so I was all prepared as she's telling me this to refute her. And then she said, "But turn to 1 Peter chapter 3. And I didn't really know 1 Peter 3 that well. 1 Peter 3 has the famous verses of always be prepared to give a defense or give an answer, apologetics, for the reason for the hope that's in you. But further down in that passage, we are told that while the ark was being prepared for Noah, in which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through water, baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you." And she gives me this verse, and I'm like, I've been reading the Bible since I was a teenager. I have never seen that verse, and I had no answer for her. And I felt so defeated, and I think she probably walked away saying, "Hey, this is great. I just stumped this Baptist pastor," and he had no answer for me. And that was the kind of experience I often had as a pastor, wanting to evangelize, wanting to lead my church in evangelism, and just feeling completely inadequate for it.
So that raises a key question then with the training you've now undergone, your education, your experience over many, many years now doing apologetics and training others. what difference do you think it would have made
Oh,
for you in your pastorate up there in Connecticut if you had had some of this training and the knowledge you have now? How would things have looked in that context?
Jeff, it would have changed everything. One of the things I liked about our church was it was on a street corner. We had no parking. So you walk out the front door of the
Mm,
church and you're on the street corner, and all day long, people passing by.
mm,
But because I didn't know apologetics, I had no confidence that I could go out there and engage people. We would have people often come into the church when I was working during the week looking for financial handouts. And I would always share the gospel with them, but I never took the time to ask them, what do you believe? And challenge their unbelief. It was always, well, let me tell you about Jesus before we give you some financial help to get you through. And as a result, then I was unable to prepare the people in my church to engage unbelievers in their world, their neighborhoods, their friend group, their coworkers. And I always felt the burden of that because I thought I can't do it myself, and I certainly can't prepare them. I taught on evangelism. I believed in it, but all I knew was just a monologue approach where you corner an unbeliever and you get through the gospel in hopes that they don't cut you off, and then ask, would you like to believe?
the
So
gospel burp.
yeah, there was no real engagement
Yeah.
with unbelievers where they were. And looking back now, I realized, man, that would have changed everything about my pastoral ministry. So I long for pastors to gain a vision of what apologetics can do. It's not everything, preaching, praying, discipling, counseling, administrating. Pastor has to do so much. But I firmly believe that if a pastor would learn apologetics, and I don't mean just any apologetic approach, as we'll talk about in just a moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of apologetics that is wonderful on a high-level academic debate, but not so useful in practical day-to-day. I feel like the confidence apologetics gives you to know that you can answer any legitimate objection raised against the Christian faith. And then to think through, how can I, in every passage that I preach, point out aspects of unbelief and give an answer to them so that I'm preparing my congregation. It changes everything.
Yeah. Almost whatever text you're in, you can work with it with your people of, hey, here's an objection to what this text is saying that you might
Yes.
hear, and here's how you might respond. You're equipping your people and
Yes.
bringing that to their attention of, oh, here's how somebody might object to this text, and here's how I'm to think through a response. And I mean, that's a great preaching method to be able to equip your people.
Apologetics done well gives you confidence, and it will give your people confidence if you're a pastor. They will learn that, okay, each week when the pastor preaches or on a regular basis, he's bringing up, here's a form of unbelief that this text touches on. Here's how we answer this. People start to gain confidence. We have answers for these things.
Yeah. And I can do this too. Like,
Yeah.
I can talk with my coworker
Right.
who, maybe has a question about the Bible and think through those issues. So would you say one of those potential benefits that could result from, a church pastor emphasizing apologetics more is that people are more confident and more open to actually talking with people they know, whether it's coworker, family, friends? They become more confident in actually engaging in spiritual conversations with unbelievers that they already know.
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. In my church, we would have Vacation Bible School was a big thing for us, so we would plan for that. We would sometimes get out over 100 kids in the neighborhood, and we're talking in our own church, we only had maybe a dozen kids. So we would bring in sometimes dozens or 100 kids from the neighborhood for a week of VBS where we're presenting the gospel. But that was essentially our only evangelistic effort. Because I was not able to equip my people to have these conversations, I myself was not having these conversations with my neighbors or the people I would meet, and therefore my people most of the time weren't. Some of the people in my church were evangelistically minded, but they didn't know apologetics. So they would frequently witness, but not a lot of results, not a lot of effectiveness.
Yeah. Which raises a question of why do you think that is? Why do you think a lot of churches or pastors don't talk about or emphasize
Hmm.
apologetics or evangelism? What are some of the reasons you think that it's just not a priority seemingly for a lot of pastors or
Yeah.
churches?
Well, we could probably talk about a number of them. I would say initially, many of them do not get this kind of focus in seminary if they go to seminary or Bible college. They may get a class on evangelism, may even have a class on apologetics, but the way apologetics is often taught is in a classical apologetics way, which is deeply philosophical. You're learning these medieval arguments for the existence of a God that are deeply difficult to grasp. Or you might get an evidentialist approach to apologetics, which is really exciting. Like there's so many evidences. If we talk about even just the historicity of the Gospels,
Yeah.
or even just the focus on the
The
resurrection,
resurrection.
there's
Yeah.
mountains of evidence for
Yeah.
that.
Just for that one thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. And that doesn't even include everything else in the Bible or the Christian
Yeah.
faith.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. But the truth is, as a pastor, you have so many other skills to learn. You need to learn theology, many times biblical languages, preaching, counseling, administration, that excitement of apologetics can sometimes get lost in the day-to-day because that approach, the evidentialist approach, is all about trying to learn literally hundreds of answers to questions that may come up. And there's hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of questions, objections that can be raised by people. And I don't think anyone can actually learn them all.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so as a result then, and if you're not actually engaging unbelievers on a regular basis, you start to forget those. Your mind starts to let go of some of those details. And so you start to lose confidence.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons why pastors don't put more emphasis on apologetics. It's a nice field of study for when you encounter an unbeliever who asks you a question. Then you could say, oh, yeah, I think we learned about that in seminary. And you pull the book off your shelf and you find the answer, not realizing that it has so much more power than that.
And do you think perhaps a reason that builds off of that, that's connected, do you think maybe one reason people have this view is we tend to think of apologetics as a very academic discipline
yeah.
of, oh, that's great, it's needed, but it's kind of, we'll let the professionals do that. We'll let the seminary professors and the really smart student, like they can devote all that time. And so we've kind of siloed it into, it's this academic discipline. And like you mentioned, it requires a lot of knowledge if you're thinking about it from a classical or evidentialist perspective. And so it almost silos itself to thinking, oh, it's just so academic. And so it's not for the average ordinary church member. And that could potentially be one reason why some churches don't emphasize it, is we've kind of thought about it as this more academic discipline in nature, when in reality, Scripture says this is the duty of every Christian is called to do this, which is why apologetic method matters.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think you're right. And along with the emphasis on philosophical arguments, often comes the idea of being argumentative. And the truth is, most people, I don't like to be well, I do like to be argumentative, but that's not a good feature of my personality. Most people don't want to be argumentative, certainly not about their faith. And so even pastors have the impression, because this happened recently in Connecticut, I was talking to a pastor, and I asked him about his interest in apologetics because I would really like to work with him in his church. And his response was, well, we've not found that arguing with people really gets you anywhere up here. And I'm like, no, that's not what apologetics is. It's not arguing with people.
Right.
But probably in his experience, the only experience he's had with apologetics is debate. and argumentative videos of people doing on the street kind of stuff.
Right.
And there is a place for that. There's a place for academic debate. There is a place even for public argumentation. If you've ever seen videos of Speaker's Corner in London,
Right.
where the whole point of that is for you to come and you present an argument for what you believe. And it's supposed to be a back and forth, but typically the only kind of people drawn to that are very extrovertish people who are not the least bit intimidated by argument. Yeah. And so that's wonderful for that. But our approach to apologetics is a conversational approach. It's a relational approach. It is the kind of thing where you disarm people by asking questions and showing interest in their beliefs first, before you present Christ, and you subvert their beliefs, you undermine them by asking challenging questions that they cannot answer.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's the kind of thing that any person can do. I've had introverts tell me, I'm using this because I'm able to ask questions and it doesn't come across as aggressive.
Right.
And yet I am challenging people on their beliefs and they are struggling to give the answer. And I think if more people understood apologetics that way, the presuppositional approach, they would recognize this is something every Christian can do, and it would change their lives if they were doing it. This is the thing I honestly believe. For if you're a pastor watching this, if you're a lay person, share this video with your pastor.
Yes. Yeah.
This can transform your church, because if your people gain confidence that in their present relationships of neighbors, friends, coworkers, family, classmates, acquaintances, they can start spiritual conversations, ask questions, indirectly challenge people on their beliefs and present Christ. It'll change your church. People will come to church excited to share with their brothers and sisters in Christ. Oh, I had the most amazing opportunity with my neighbor this week. I had time with my coworker and we really made progress. Would you pray for them? Then they're sharing prayer requests.
Yeah. In fact, to give a real world example, there's a number of gentlemen in my own church, one in particular who drives Uber, and the amount of experiences he has had with just people he picks up, gives a ride to, and they'll share about what they believe, and he'll text me and say, "Hey, I gave this ride to this gentleman today, and he was talking about X, Y, and Z," and the ability, that I can help encourage him and say, "Hey, next time, if you ever have that opportunity again," which he has them every week, and I encourage him, like, hey, learn how to ask, some of these good questions. Hey, what do you mean by that? And, you how did you come to that conclusion of the claim they just made, perhaps? And learn to ask good questions and listen, and maybe use questions that kind of subvert what they're saying and they don't even realize it. But the ability to ask good questions that people start thinking through. I mean, that is a great skill, and anyone can do it. Yes. Anyone can learn to ask those good questions. So I'm seeing it in my own church of people who these opportunities. And so, any Christian can do this and is called to do it.
Yeah. A few more reasons why pastors aren't interested in apologetics. Let's go to the darker side. I think some pastors don't have a heart for the lost. I hate to say it, but it's true. I mean, so much of pastoral ministry is inwardly focused, right? You're discipling your people, you're counseling them, you're leading them, preaching. And honestly, some pastors lose the burden for the lost. And that shows in their preaching, because there's no sense of urgency to reach the lost in their preaching. They become inward focused. I was talking to a church a couple of years ago, and I asked them about their outreach, and they weren't that interested. And this is a good church.
Yeah,
they preach the gospel, well, to their own people, and they talk about proclaiming Christ to the world, but they're doing nothing. And I think some pastors just don't have the burden for the lost. I think another reason, and this is true of me, some pastors are just afraid of engaging the lost. I grew up in a setting where you weren't supposed to have unsaved friends. And if you came around unsaved people, you're supposed to be witnessing to them because they're going to corrupt your faith and corrupt your life. And so they're a danger. And part of my years in pastoral ministry, I was uncomfortable being around lost people. Thank God that's not the way it is now. I love being around lost people because I have a game plan for engaging them.
Right.
But I think some pastors are afraid of that, afraid, just like any Christian would be. They'll ask me a question I can't answer. They'll ask a question that challenges me and maybe undermines my faith, or I'm just too busy with pastoral ministry. I don't have time for the lost. And that's sad.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, I would encourage a pastor, let me help you. Let us help you.
Yeah, we can provide that training.
To regain the urgency of the lost and the confidence that you can engage them well.
Yeah. And I think that brings up a good point of kind of twofold there of one, the impact that just some basic training can do. Like thinking about, if I was on a football team and I had never practiced before, and then all of a sudden I was called into the game, I'd be very nervous and very
you're gonna
afraid.
take a hit.
I don't know what I'm doing. But if I had gone through practice and coach had helped me, here's where you put your hands, here's your stance, here's then I would have more confidence going into the game when the time came that, my number was called. And so that's the great benefit of training, is it gives you that practice where, like you said, when you're around an unbeliever, you have a game plan.
Yes.
You have a strategy of, okay, here's how I'm going to navigate this conversation. And so I think that's the first point is, we just need Christians today, if we have a good game plan, some good training of some key questions to ask, key subjects to address, the amount of confidence that can give. And I think the second thing too is we need a lot of courage. In today's church, in today's environment, Christians need courage, because it is one thing that we've probably all been in that situation where we've had the game plan and we shrank back because of either fear or nervousness. And so I think in those moments we need to pray, Lord, give me the opportunity, yes, but when the opportunity comes, Lord, give me the courage to take that step. And I think that's a key thing that we need more of.
And Peter talks about that in 1 Peter 3:14, before we get to the verse that includes the word apologetics. He says, even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, I think that's part of the fear. What if this person mocks me? What if this person belittles me? Worse fear, what if this person punches me in the face?
Yeah.
Or beats me up because I'm sharing Christ with them?
Yeah.
Unlikely in America, at least most parts. Even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled. So we are supposed to and called to overcome our fears and engage people with the gospel because of the outcome of that, which is that God's word does not return void. It accomplishes the purpose for which he sends it out.
Yes.
So I hope this video has been encouraging to you. We long to see churches not single-mindedly focused on apologetics, because the work of the ministry is broad, but include apologetics and engagement with unbelievers as a core value, because we believe this will change churches. It will change believers. It will reach unbelievers, and to give pastors the confidence that they themselves can lead the church in this. That's the biggest thing. If I knew then what I know now, I would have confidently led my church in this, taught them how to do this, modeled this for them, and it would have transformed our church even more.
Yeah.
So that's my hope and prayer for you, that churches and pastors would learn to love apologetics and do it well, because it will change us, and we need that in the American church.
Amen.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to find more resources on apologetics, go to apologeticsforthechurch.org.